Conspiracies that would make QAnon and flat earthers jealous. My name is Jovan Bradley, and this is the Weekly Dump. Welcome to the Weekly Dump, your number one source for number two news. Wait, I had that backwards. Your number two source for number one news. My name is Jovan Bradley, and we are back to bring you more of what you crave, that sweet, sweet leftist indoctrination. We are again live here in Studio B. Today is Sunday, October 12th, and we have in the studio with me producer Steve, technical director Chris, and director of photography Jonathan to bring you a great show. Now, today's show is going to be a little bit shorter than usual. We have a really interesting story to talk about. It's going to be our primary focus today. If you remember some stories we did a couple weeks ago, you're going to be pretty excited about this one. But before we get into that, I do just want to say hello. Welcome in, my sweet, sweet dumperoonies. I hope you had a good week. I had a good week. Steve had a good week. Chris had a good week. Jonathan had a good week. I didn't ask them. I'm just assuming. Everybody's hopefully had a good week because a lot of people in the country have not this week. I do want to remind people that if you want to support the show, if you want to support biased leftist news, I'm kind of just owning it now. We're absolutely biased here over on Red Mirror Media. We are a leftist news and I guess not news, but like a leftist media organization. So like we don't like conservative politics and we don't like right-leaning things. So I'm going to own up to that. But I will trash talk the libs just as much, I promise you. If you want to support us, you can head on over to Patreon at Red Mirror Media, and you can support any of our shows. You can support the Weekly Dump. You can support Critical Mass. You can support all of the shows at once. Do that. You can also send us a super chat, which I think we have one if we want to read it now, Steve, in the booth, if we want to hit up the super chats. Because, why not start with the super chats? And here we go. From J-Man Vlog said, gonna reference the callback all the time. Take down capitalism one internet provider at a time. Listen, one day Spectrum will stop messing with me. Today is not that day. Thank you so much, J-Man, for your support of the show. It means the world. If you guys send a super chat of $5 or more, we're going to put it up on the screen right here. We're going to read it. We're going to just say, you can make me say some wild shit, guys. Right? We don't have sponsors, so like you could make me say something crazy. Or you could use it as a way to like tell a loved one happy birthday. Or if you want. Anyway, thank you so much for the super chat. Welcome into the show, everybody. I hope you are ready. It's going to be a good one. We aren't taking calls today because we are focused on the news. And like I said, we do have to do something a little bit after the show that's going to take up a bit of time. So for today, it's just going to be some news. Now, we have a couple of brief updates before we get into our main story of the show. So we're going to give those to you now. First, the U.S. is allowing Qatar to build an Air Force base on U.S. soil and use it as a training ground for Qatari military personnel. Now, this is not the first or the last time a foreign nation will have training bases in the US. We conduct joint training sessions with countries all the time. It's just, kind of weird that this time it's with a country that personally gifted Trump with a $400 million jet. The base is meant to host Qatari F-15 aircrafts as well as pilots. And, rightfully so, some Americans are a little concerned about this. U.S. officials are emphasizing that the base will remain under U.S. control and that Qatar doesn't really own the base. But let's just keep it $1.50. That sounds like when you and a friend agree to joint buy an Xbox. No, I promise, Chuck, it'll stay at my house on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and your house on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then we'll alternate weekends unless it's a holiday weekend, in which case we'll take this to arbitration and allow an unbiased third party to come up with a preferred custody decision. It's just kind of stupid, okay? Now, I don't know about you guys, okay? But when Marjorie Taylor Greene starts making sense and going, hey, why are we doing these? We should probably rethink our decisions. Next, Israel and Hamas have tentatively agreed to begin the first stages of a peace deal. The deal is part of a 20-step peace agreement put forth by Donald Trump, and people on both sides are giving Trump his flowers for aiding in peace negotiations. Although, we really don't know how much of the deal was worked on through Trump personally or just through arbitration with third parties. Now, we are very apprehensive about this deal because, one, Israel still gets to maintain a presence in Gaza, just at approved upon lines. Those lines, by the way, are still in Gaza, and in fact, will still give the IDF a hold on 30 to 50% of Gaza territory. And two, Netanyahu is really mad at this deal. He's not happy. He doesn't want this, and it goes against his plans and rules for the area. Israel is saying that this deal was fully imposed on Netanyahu. He is still interested in making sure he doesn't have to follow this agreement. So we'll see how this unfolds in the coming days, but know this. This wasn't a massively agreed upon deal by both sides. They tentatively agreed to the first step of a peace plan, which involves the release of hostages from both sides on Monday. Notably, Hamas is not disarming or giving up weapons. They are holding firm that they do not trust Israel to uphold their end of the deal. Now, I need you guys to understand something here. It's really important, especially when we look at all of this. They did not agree to a ceasefire. This is a mischaracterization of what has happened. Both Israel and Hamas spokespeople are saying there is not a ceasefire. It is just an agreement to the first part of a peace deal. That is it. So if somebody comes to you and says, aren't you happy Trump negotiated a ceasefire? He didn't. We don't know what's going to happen yet. All we know is we're going to see on Monday if the hostages are freed. Notably, this includes 2,000 hostages that are being held by Israel. Now, they claim all of these hostages that they are holding are political prisoners, but we know this to not be the case. Through reporting from the UN and from the ICJ, they are holding innocent Palestinians. So hopefully this goes off without a hitch. Obviously, I don't believe it's going to go off without a hitch. You might believe it's going to go off without a hitch. Comment and let us know. Tell us in the comments what you think. I do have chat pulled up here so I can see everybody that comments on the Red Mirror page. Producer Steve is in the booth also checking chat to make sure that, you guys are behaving. I'm looking at you, J-Man. And B, to see if, you guys have anything interesting to say about all the stories we talk about. So, speaking of Israel, we're going to get into our main conversation of the day. Now, before we start this story, okay? Before we get into it, there are some things I need you guys to know about what we are about to talk about. Anybody watching the show who is going to tell me, hey guys, this sounds like a conspiracy theory. Yes, sure does. Anybody watching who goes, has Jovan jumped off the deep end? Yes, but not for the reasons that you're saying. Anybody who's about to listen to what we're about to say, who thinks that I might be overreacting. Let's just see how you feel at the end of the story. Okay, here we go. So a couple of weeks ago, we put out on the channel a video about the Dark Enlightenment. Now, this is the anti-democratic ideology of techno-feudal lords that's embedded itself into the United States government. You should go watch it. It's pretty great, and it's really eye-opening into what's going on in our government at the highest levels. What we are talking about today started off much in the same way. A single name that seemed interesting, and one weird connection that didn't quite add up. But the deeper we dug, the more names appeared, and every connection led to 3 more. Every billionaire was friends with the same politicians. Every media company was owned by someone with the same ties. What started as, who is this person who just got hired at CBS? Turned into a web so big, we had to literally map it out just to keep track. And do you want to know what's batshit crazy? It's part of the same fucking web. The same people from our Dark Enlightenment video, Peter Thiel, Curtis Yarvin, JD Vance, they're all here too. This isn't a separate story, no. It's another part of the same story. And it's about who controls what you see, what you hear, and what you're allowed to think. Media control about one of the most important geopolitical conflicts of our time. Let's start at the beginning. This month, CBS News appointed Barry Weiss, a former New York Times columnist and founder of the media outlet The Free Press, to a newly created position, editor-in-chief of CBS News. Now, if you're not familiar with Miss Weiss, and you think, okay, maybe she's just a normal journalist. Nah, dog. She has proudly proclaimed herself to be a Zionist fanatic, and she now controls the editorial direction of one of America's top news networks. Barry Weiss didn't land this job because she's the second coming of Walter Cronkite. To anyone born after the 90s, let me just explain really quickly. Walter Cronkite was a really famous journalist that your parents' listened to back when TV used to look like this and movies cost a quarter. So, as I was saying, she didn't get her job for being a great journalist. She got it because of who bought CBS News, who those people are friends with, and what they're trying to turn American media into a Zionist propaganda factory for the Lord of Genocide. So, let's talk about Barry Weiss because understanding her career is the first step to understanding how this whole thing works. Now, on paper, she's a free speech advocate. She is anti cancel culture and anti woke. She wants that swamp drained and hates all things anti American. She dramatically quit the New York Times in 2020, claiming she was bullied by her colleagues. So, she started the Free Press in 2021, positioning it as this brave alternative to biased mainstream media. She's made a career out of being a truth teller. But there's this other pattern in her career, and it goes back 20 years, not 5. It explains everything about why she's currently running CBS News, and it starts at Columbia University in the mid 2000s. Yes, the mid 2000s. Shrek 2 was dominating at the box office, Tom was helping you decide who to put in your top friends on MySpace, and the Motorola Razr, arguably the greatest phone ever invented, was taking the world by storm. What a time to be alive. Anyway, back to Barry Weiss. So, 2004 to 2007. This is when Weiss was a student at Columbia University, and during those years, she led Islamophobic campaigns against Arab professors, which is just as cruel and fucked up as it sounds. Her playbook was pretty straightforward. It's one you're very familiar with. Take their criticism of Israeli government policy, reframe it as anti Semitism, and then demand the university discipline or fire them. It got bad enough that the New York Civil Liberties Union had to step in, raising concerns about academic freedom. And I want you to lock in with me right now, guys, because this is a clear-cut pattern. You're going to see it over and over again in Barry Weiss's career. She positions herself as this defender of free speech, open debate, and intellectual diversity. That whole tired spiel. But when it comes to Israel, nah. Shut it down. Don't say a word. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not secretly sneak $500 out of the bank to pay for when you accidentally land on the hotel your friend has built on Park Place. Fucking Park Place. Like, the game's over at this point. Just give it up. Maybe try a different game. I don't know. Maybe sorry. Look, this tactic isn't anything you don't know. You've witnessed it nonstop for the last 2 years. And this was 20 years ago. She is an OG shill. She was simping for Netanyahu before Marvel released Iron Man. That's dedication. So then, in 2017, Weiss gets hired at the New York Times as an opinion writer and editor. Now, that's a pretty big deal, right? In journalist standards, the New York Times is a pretty prestigious job. And almost immediately, the same tensions start showing up. She writes a 2019 column going after Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, accusing her of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Semitic refers to people who speak Semitic languages, and Ilhan Omar would also be considered as someone who speaks Semitic languages, so we won't talk about that. We won't talk about that today. But the column gets major backlash because, again, she's conflating criticism of Israeli policy with anti-Semitism and anti-Jewish sentiment. Tensions inside the Times newsroom get worse. Other journalists are pushing back. Taylor Lorenz even calls out Weiss for describing the whole situation as a woke civil war, saying that's a complete mischaracterization of what's actually happening. Then, in July 2020, Weiss quits. But she doesn't just resign quietly like any normal person would do. She publishes this letter that goes completely viral. She claims she's being harassed and bullied by progressive colleagues who just can't tolerate her views. The letter becomes this massive rallying point for anti-woke conservatives. It's everywhere, and she's being held up as a martyr. The pattern, the exact same one from Columbia, where she positions herself as the victim while allegedly trying to eliminate other people's voices. Columbia, 2004, New York Times, 2020. Now, according to her critics, same tactics, different buildings. So the Times chapter ends, but Weiss's influence, well, that's just getting started. Because what she does next is launch her own media company, the Free Press. And when October 7th happens in 2023, she's ready for it, with decades of training behind her. Now, the elevator pitch for the Free Press is basically we're the alternative to mainstream media. We'll publish stories and perspectives you won't find anywhere else. We're real news. No bias here. Blah, blah, fucking blah. You know, if I had a nickel for every conservative leaning news publication that claims to be unbiased but truly does not ultra right leaning talking points, I'd be rich enough to run a conservative leaning news publication that claims to be unbiased but truly does nothing but push ultra right leaning talking points. At least us here at Red Mirror Media admit to our biases. We know we lean low and to the left. We embrace it. We thrive on it. It gives us our much needed solidarity energy. And look, for a while, if you were to take a look at the Free Press, they did publish across the political spectrum. You've got some left-leaning pieces here, some right-leaning pieces there. It's got this vibe of we're not beholden to any ideology. Until October 7th. What happens after this? Well, the Free Press's coverage starts showing a very clear editorial line. And it's not subtle. They're running pieces that dispute whether there's actually famine happening in Gaza, even though the United Nations and multiple medical organizations on the ground are documenting mass starvation. They're framing the entire conflict as civilization versus barbarism. Not a complex geopolitical situation with civilians suffering on multiple sides. Not a military operation with legitimate questions about proportionality and war crimes. Nope! Civilization versus barbarism. And then, investigative journalists start digging into where some of this content is actually coming from. And they find out that a significant chunk of the Free Press's Middle East coverage is being produced in collaboration with a pro-Israel nonprofit think tank, ironically called the Center for Peace Communications. Now, what is the Center for Peace Communications? Well, it's a nonprofit whose board includes senior figures from major pro-Israel think tanks in Washington, organizations like the Foundation for Defense of Democracies and the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. One of their most prominent board members is Dennis Ross, who's been one of the most visible supporters of Israel in D.C. for decades. So, October 7th is where it was clear and obvious to anyone with the ability to read that the Free Press served as Israeli propaganda. But it was actually first apparent for those watching Barry's content in November 2022 when Barry interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu on her podcast. Now picture this. Benjamin Netanyahu is about to return to power as Prime Minister of Israel. He's putting together what will be one of the most right-wing coalition governments in Israeli history. International observers are concerned about what this means, so naturally, Barry Weiss gives him a platform. She does this long interview with Netanyahu and it gets published on the Free Press. And look, interviewing world leaders isn't automatically a problem, right? Journalists talk to controversial figures all the time. But as a journalist, are you challenging them or are you pushing back on their framing? Are you just giving them a microphone to deliver their talking points? Now, this was no different than when Andrew Schultz softballed Trump or when the Nelk boys played footsies with Netanyahu while staying up late and talking about boys. But there is a pretty big fucking difference here. They don't claim to be journalists like Barry Weiss does. They couldn't conduct themselves as journalists if they tried. So, during the conversation, Weiss and Netanyahu talk about Trump having dinner with Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, literal anti-Semites. Netanyahu brushes it off, and while he says it was wrong, he also said about Trump that he's been a tremendous supporter of Israel, and that he's deeply grateful for what he's done. Zero pushback from Barry. They discuss Netanyahu's brother dying during a famous Israeli military operation, and Netanyahu describes the broader conflict using almost identical language to what the Free Press will later use about Gaza. He calls it civilizational battle. Barbarians versus freedom and human rights. Notice the framing. It's not a political conflict. It's not about competing nations' interests or disputed territory or military occupation. It's barbarians versus civilization. The same exact language the Free Press will use a year later when they are covering Gaza. This is an alignment, it's not an interview. A shared worldview between the journalist and the subject. And that worldview gets baked into every piece of coverage that follows. So, Now we've got the full picture of who Barry Weiss really is, right? Decades of pro Israel advocacy going back to her college days, a media outlet that partners with pro Israel think tanks to produce its Middle East content, a personal interview with Netanyahu where they both of them describe Palestinians using dehumanizing language. And now she's editor in chief of CBS fucking News. So, how does this happen? How does someone with this track record end up running editorial at one of the three major American broadcast networks? The answer is in who just bought CBS. A father worth almost $400 billion and a son who just closed a massive media merger. And both of them have extremely direct, extremely well documented ties to the Israeli government. Let me introduce you to the Ellisons. Larry Ellison, co-founder of Oracle Corporation with a net worth of $393 billion. Second richest man in the world, by the way. And he's not just some rich asshole, he's Benjamin Netanyahu's personal friend. And I don't mean they met at a conference once. No, I mean, let's hang out at my private Hawaiian island type shit. Larry Ellison donated $16.6 million directly to the nonprofit Friends of the IDF. That's the largest single donation that organization has ever received. Ever. Larry even offered Netanyahu a lucrative position on Oracle's board of directors worth around $450,000. A sitting prime minister of Israel getting a corporate board seat from an American billionaire. Can you smell that? It smells like collusion. But it's not just Larry Ellison personally, it's Oracle as a company. Now, Oracle positions itself as a software company. Its claimed focus is on middleware and business apps, things like system integration, application servers, identity management, the stuff sleepiness is made out of. But if they're a software company, why put an Israeli prime minister on your board of directors? Enter Oracle CEO, a woman named Safra Katz. Well, in 2015, she wrote an email that said, and I quote, "We have to fight this battle before the kids even get to college. We believe that we have to embed the love and respect for Israel in the American culture." I'm going to say it again. It's so fucking crazy. Embed the love and respect for Israel in American culture. That's for sure not about selling business-related software. And yet, it's the left that are always called the groomers, right? They put Oracle stands with Israel on company screens, not just in the US, in over 180 countries where Oracle operates. Every employee, everywhere, seeing that message. And Safra Katz reportedly told employees that if they weren't pro-Israel, then they shouldn't be working at the company. So, that's Larry Ellison's company. Now, let's talk about his son, David Ellison. His company, Skydance, who we've talked about multiple times on this show, completed a massive merger to acquire Paramount, which owns CBS News. David Ellison decided last week to create a brand new position at CBS News that's never existed before. Editor-in-chief over all news content. Then he brings in Barry Weiss, and according to the Financial Times, Weiss won Ellison over partly by taking a pro-Israel stance. That's what sealed the deal for her getting the job. CBS News has been around for decades, okay? Walter Cronkite, Edward R. Murrow, trusted names in journalism. And they never had an editor-in-chief position like this before. David Ellison creates it, and he puts Barry Weiss in charge. And look, I'm not saying that having an editor-in-chief is a bad thing, or even that creating the position in order to head all of your news departments is in and of itself malicious. I am questioning, however, the motives behind the creation of the position and specifically placing Barry Weiss in charge. And what's odd to me is that Barry doesn't even report through the normal news division hierarchy. She doesn't go from leading the CBS News division to the heads at CBS or the board. She reports directly to David Ellison, the CEO of Skydance Paramount. That means the person shaping editorial priorities at CBS News answers to the son of Netanyahu's personal friend and pay pig. Interesting. Now, CBS News and Barry Weiss are just one piece of this, because Larry Ellison's influence doesn't stop at traditional broadcast television. Remember when I said Every connection led to 3 more. Well, the Ellisons are also deeply involved in another media takeover, one that affects a much younger audience, one that Netanyahu himself called the most important acquisition right now. Buckle up, buckaroos, because next we need to talk about TikTok. So, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, a Chinese tech company. Trump doesn't like that. He doesn't like that TikTok is owned by ByteDance, and in 2020 issues an executive order basically declaring TikTok a national security threat. 2022, Congress passes the No TikTok on Government Devices Act, banning the app from all government phones, tablets, and computers. 2024, the House passes H.R. 7521, which forces ByteDance to either sell TikTok or the app will be banned nationwide. 2025, Trump keeps pushing the deadline for the sale back, claiming he's the savior of TikTok. And finally, we're up to today, with reports emerging that China and the US are close to finalizing a deal for US ownership over the US operations side of TikTok. And in swoops a group of US investors ready to take on the difficult and thankless task of running the US side. But who are those investors? Percent ownership of TikTok US. But it's not just owning shares. Oracle gets control of the algorithm itself. They can rebuild it, retrain it, monitor it, make it bigger, stronger. They have complete control over the recommendation software, the thing that decides what content gets pushed to millions of users. So let's follow this one more time. The guy who's Netanyahu's personal friend who donated $16 million to pro-IDF organizations, whose company wants to embed love for Israel in American culture, he now controls TikTok, which arguably is one of the largest culturally influencing apps in the country, if not the world. Let's look at who else is in this deal. Rupert Murdoch. Yeah, that Rupert Murdoch. Owner of Fox News, Rupert Murdoch. His outlets have been widely criticized for uncritically defending Israeli government actions and attacking pro-Palestinian activism. Michael Dell, owner of Dell Technologies. Dell's company supplied Israel's military with hardware, data systems, and AI technology. The UN actually mentioned Dell in a report about companies profiting from the Israeli occupation. Jeff Yass. In 2011 and 2019, he donated over $16 million to anti-Muslim and pro-Israel groups. He gave $1.5 million to Citizens for a Nuclear-Free Iran, which is basically an AIPAC group that opposed the Iran nuclear deal. Then you've got Silver Lake. They're a private equity firm, and they partnered with Raphael. That's an Israeli defense company, literally owned by the 1% stake in TikTok. Now, why is the UAE involved? Because of something called the Abraham Accords. So the Abraham Accords, for those who don't know, were a peace agreement. Peace agreement. Peace agreement. Notice the air quote. I can do them harder, okay? It was a peace agreement brokered by Trump between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain. In 2020, the UAE normalized relations with Israel through these Abraham Accords, and since then, they've become deeply economically intertwined with Israel. MGX is connected to this company called G42. It's chaired by the UAE's National Security Advisor, and G was the first UAE company to open an office in Israel after the Accords. They partnered with Israel's companies on AI and surveillance technologies. So, you've got a UAE government fund and an Israeli-aligned tech company, both involved in TikTok ownership. Notice anything? Every single major investor in TikTok US has documented financial ties to the Israeli military or government. Every single one. This isn't a coincidence. Delete the app, people. If it sells, delete the app. And we know this was intentional because Netanyahu himself told us. In September 2024, he said, and this is on record, that the most important purchase going on right now is TikTok. Number one.
We're going to have to use the tools of battle. You know, the weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well, okay? And you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, you know, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are in social media. And the most important purchase that is going on right now is
Followers.
TikTok. TikTok, number one. And I hope it goes through because it's It can be consequential. And the other one, what's
Now, he didn't say an important purchase or one of several important developments. He said the most important, number one. Then he said, we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged, and the most important ones are on social media. But it's not just about who owns TikTok, it's also about who's moderating the content, who's deciding what gets removed, and that leads us to an organization called Cyberwell. Now, Cyberwell positions itself as an NGO focused on fighting online hate speech and anti Semitism. Sounds reasonable, right? Anti Jewish sentiment has been on the rise in online spaces for a while now. I don't have to tell you guys what goes down in a 4chan chat room. But here's what they don't advertise Cyberwell is closely linked to the Israeli government, and it's staffed by Israeli intelligence operatives. So you've got former intelligence officers, people trained in informational warfare, now deciding what content about Israel and Palestine gets flagged for removal on TikTok. So, first layer, Oracle controls the algorithm. They decide what's recommended, what shows up on your For You page, what goes viral. That's Larry Ellison's company and Netanyahu's personal friend. Second layer, you have Cyberwell. They handle content moderation. They decide what gets flagged as hate speech, what gets removed entirely, what gets accounts suspended. That's Israeli intelligence operations. So, let's say you're a Palestinian in Gaza and you post a video showing what's happening in your neighborhood destruction, casualties, the reality on the ground. That video has to get through two checkpoints. First, will the algorithm amplify it, or will Oracle's system bury it? Second, will Cyberwell flag it as problematic content and get it removed? And both of these checkpoints are controlled by people with direct ties to the Israeli government. And we're not speculating here. This is the actual structure. Oracle's control over the algorithm is public. Cyberwell's partnership with TikTok is documented. The staffing by Israeli intelligence operatives has been reported. The infrastructure for controlling the narrative about Israel Palestine on TikTok is built and operational. If you used TikTok recently, you know what I'm talking about. So now, the same network that controls CBS News through Barry Weiss also controls TikTok through Oracle and Cyberwell. Traditional broadcast media and social media. Older Americans watching CBS and younger Americans scrolling TikTok, both shaped by the same interests, both filtered through the same ideological lens. But remember at the beginning, I said this connects to the Dark Enlightenment. Well, here's where those threads come together. Because Larry Ellison isn't the only billionaire tech executive with deep Israeli ties who's taking over American media. In our Dark Enlightenment video, we talked about Peter Thiel, billionaire founder of PayPal and Palantir. Major Trump donor, the guy who basically created J.D. Vance's political career. We talked about how Thiel is connected to Curtis Yarvin, the anti-democratic ideologue who wants to replace democracy with corporate monarchy. But what we didn't get into was Thiel's Israel connections. And let me tell you, they're extensive. Let's start with Palantir. Thiel's data analytics company in January 2024, Palantir signed a strategic partnership with the Israeli Ministry of Defense. They're providing technology for what they call war-related missions. Now, what does that mean in practice? It means AI-powered battlefield intelligence. Analyzing targets, proposing battle plans, this is the technology that helps the Israeli military decide who to strike and where. There's a specific AI targeting program that's been reported on called Lavender. It uses artificial intelligence to generate lists of targets in Gaza. And when Thiel was asked about Palantir's role in this system, a system that's been connected to mass civilian casualties, here's what he said, quote, "My bias is to defer to Israel. I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do and that they're broadly in the right." Holy fucking shit. This is the guy whose company is providing the targeting AI, and he's saying he's not going to question how it's used. He defers to Israel. It got serious enough that a Norwegian investor called Storebrand divested $24 million from Palantir, and they cited Palantir's provision of AI based predictive policing systems that support Israeli surveillance of Palestinians in their divestment. But it's not just corporate. Thiel has personal connections to Netanyahu. In 2017, he visited Israel and met with Netanyahu directly. He spoke to tech entrepreneurs in Tel Aviv, praising Israel's economic success. Then, in September 2024, Thiel attended a wedding in Jerusalem, and some of the other guests at the wedding later met with Netanyahu as well. Thiel also invested in multiple Israel intelligence linked companies. There's one called Carbine. It's an emergency response company. It was co founded by former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak, and it's staffed with former Mossad operatives. Another is Mensch Capital, an Israeli based venture capital firm that invests in Israeli tech startups. So Thiel is using his fund to pump money into the Israeli tech ecosystem. Now, in our last video, we covered how Peter Thiel created J.D. Vance's political career. $15 million in campaign finance, the bending of the knee to Trump for the VP position, with Thiel's personal help, the introduction to Curtis Yarvin's anti-democratic ideology. But what we didn't cover was Vance's Israeli policy, and it's crucial to understand this network. Vance, his foreign policy is basically America first, but also Israel. We pull back from foreign entanglements, stop sending aid everywhere, and focus on domestic priorities. Except Israel. Israel gets full support, full funding, full everything. Vance backed Israel's Gaza offensive. He said Israel should be empowered to eliminate Hamas commanders and military units. No qualifications, no concern about civilian casualties. He introduced bills to defund colleges that had pro-Palestinian protests or encampments. And when Biden was considering immigration protections for Palestinians fleeing the violence, Vance wrote urging him not to do it. He called Palestinians, quote, a population of potentially radicalized individuals. Where this gets even more fucked up is Curtis Yarvin's views on Palestinians. Now, Yarvin has called Palestinian toddlers genetically guilty. Not adults, not militants, toddlers, children. Genetically guilty is the most supervillain way to describe fucking babies that I've ever heard. He's defended killing civilians as necessary evil. He's been described as a vocal admirer of Israel's ethno-state model. So that's the ideological foundation. The person shaping the vice president's worldview believes in truly heinous shit about Palestinian people, and that ideology flows through Thiel, who provides the AI that helps target people in Gaza, into Vance, who has actual political power as vice president. These people are part of a network designed to take over American media, and the tinfoil hat wearing MAGA, the ones who want the swamp drained and think George Soros is behind everything the Democrats do, are blatantly ignoring the weird real world conspiracy theory, slapping them across the face. So it's not just insane American billionaires doing insane sociopathic billionaire shit. The Israeli government itself is actively running influence operations on American soil. Multi-million-dollar programs, some registered as foreign agents, some operating covertly, all designed to shape what Americans think, what Congress does, and what you're allowed to see online. And most of these operations are flying completely under the radar. Let me show you what we found. First, there's the Israeli Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. This is an actual government this is an actual government ministry, and they paid $2 million to a consulting firm called Stoic. The explicit purpose? Influence U.S. Democratic lawmakers on Gaza. $2 million from a foreign government to shape how American congresspeople vote on a foreign policy issue. This got reported. It's documented. And most Americans have no idea it happened. Well, except for Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's been low-key right on the money with her criticisms on Israeli influence in U.S. politics. What fucking backwards world are we living in? Then, there's Brad Parscale. You might remember him. He was Trump's campaign manager in 2016. Well, now, he's working for Israel with an $18 million per year contract. What's he doing for that money? AI-driven, pro-Israel messaging. Using artificial intelligence to generate and distribute content that shapes American public opinion in favor of Israel. Brad Parscale is registered as a foreign agent under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, a law that requires anyone working on behalf of a foreign government, company, or organization to register with the U.S. Department of Labor. I'm sorry, the U.S. Department of Justice. This is official, legal. A former Trump campaign manager is now a registered agent of a foreign government pumping out AI generated propaganda. Next up, something called the Esther Project. This is run by the Israeli Foreign Ministry and managed by a company called Bridge Partners LLC. They were given a budget of $900,000. What do? Well, they pay social media influencers between $6,000 and $7,000 per post to create pro-Israel content. Think about that. Influencers you follow, people who seem like they're just sharing their opinions, some of them are getting paid $6,000 a post by the Israeli government. And the influencers often don't disclose this. You're seeing what looks like organic support, but it's actually paid foreign government propaganda. Unlike us here at The Dump, who are paid nothing to do what we do. So, consider subscribing and sharing this video so we can hopefully get some of that sweet, sweet, succulent ass kissing money. Now, this next one is really disturbing. There's an organization called the Israel On-Campus Coalition, and according to undercover reporting, they have built a massive surveillance operation. Jacob Boehm, who was the executive director, described it in detail. He said the research operation is very high-tech. When he got there a few years earlier, the budget was $3,000, but it grew to $1.5 million, and then over $2 million. What are they spending it on? Well, it's simple. Spying on American citizens, specifically students and activists who support Palestinian rights. They use advanced technology. They monitor social media from over Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, blogs, TikTok, everything. They have geolocation data. They're tracking people's movements and conversations in real time. Boehm says the key to their work is to work securely and anonymously. So you've got an organization with links to Israeli intelligence using Israeli surveillance technology, spying on American students on American college campuses, building dossiers, tracking their activities, finding vulnerabilities. And they share this information with the Anti-Defamation League, which then uses it to create reports labeling these students as threats. This web of interconnectivity just keeps getting larger and larger. Some target lawmakers directly. Some target public opinion through social media. Some conduct surveillance on critics. Some are registered, some are covert. But they're all working towards the same goal: control the American conversation about Israel and Palestine. Private power plus government operations equals total control over the narrative. So when you see content about Israel and Palestine, you have to ask yourself, is the algorithm messing with its reach? Well, that's Oracle and Netanyahu's personal friends. Is it getting flagged for removal? Well, that's Cyberwell, Israeli intelligence. Is the influencer being paid? That could be Esther. It could be the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Is the politician being lobbied? Well, that could be the Diaspora Affairs operation. And this is just Israel-Palestine. Imagine this level of influence operating and running on every foreign policy issue that matters to a foreign government. All right, now let's step back so we can get the full picture, because we've covered a lot of ground, and I need you to see how all of these pieces fit together. There are two parallel tracks working towards the same goal. So we're going to do a quick recap of everything we've talked about. First, you have Larry Ellison, second richest person in the world, Netanyahu's personal friend, largest IDF donor. His company, Oracle, wants to embed the love and respect for Israel in American culture. He controls CBS News through his son, David, and editor-in-chief, Barry Weiss. He controls TikTok's algorithm through Oracle's 45% ownership. Then you have Peter Thiel, who provides AI targeting systems to the Israeli military through Palantir, says he defers to Israel on killing decisions, created the vice president of the United States with $15 million. Both billionaires, both have direct relationships with Netanyahu, both pieces of American media infrastructure. Then you've got the Israeli government running direct operations. $2 million to lobby U.S. lawmakers on Gaza, $18 million annually to Brad Parscale for AI-generated messaging, $900K paying influencers, over $2 million for the Israel On-Campus Coalition to surveil American students. That's over 30 million annually in documented programs. The real total is almost certainly higher. These tracks aren't separate, they reinforce each other. In social media, you have TikTok, Oracle, that's Ellison, controls the algorithm. Cyberwell, Israeli intelligence, controls moderation. All other major investors have documented pro Israel ties. Politics, Thiel creates Vance, who was influenced by Curtis Yarvin, who calls Palestinian children genetically guilty. The ideology, the money, and the power all flow in the same direction. So when you're scrolling TikTok and you see or don't see content about Gaza, you're experiencing the result of this network. When you're watching CBS News and certain stories get emphasized while others get downplayed, you're experiencing the result of this network. When politicians take positions that seem disconnected from public opinion, you're experiencing the result of this network. When students get surveilled and doxxed for supporting Palestinian rights, you're experiencing the result of this network. This isn't a future threat. This is happening right now. Barry Weiss sits at CBS News, shapes editorial priorities, answers to the son of Netanyahu's friend. Oracle controls what you see on TikTok. Israel intelligence operatives decide what gets removed. The vice president was created by someone whose company helps generate kill lists in Gaza. Surveillance systems are monitoring American students in real time, building dossiers. Remember how we started. Our last video was about the Dark Enlightenment. Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance, and their plan to dismantle democracy. This is the other half of that story. This is about who gets to control the information environment once democratic institutions are weakened. The answer is billionaires, with direct ties to foreign governments and ideologies that justify the slaughter of thousands of people. So what do you do with this information? Well, first, understand that when you consume media, any media, you need to ask who owns this, who funds it, and what are their stated goals. Now, luckily, if you're watching here at Red Mirror Media, we own it. We fund it. Our stated goals are class solidarity. There you go, it's so simple. Second, when you see influence campaigns online, recognize them. Paid influencers, anonymous accounts, coordinated messaging, it's not organic. It's a $30 million operation. Third, support independent journalism. The only reason we know any of this is because investigative journalists, often working for small outlets, often underfunded, did the digging. Subscribe, donate, and share their work. And fourth, talk about it. The network's power depends on complexity and invisibility. It depends on people thinking, this is too complicated to explain, or I'll sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it's not a conspiracy. It's documented. We are going to be releasing our source document with all of the sources for what we talked about. What started as a question, who is Barry Weiss and why is she running CBS News, became a map of how power actually works. Not through votes, not through democratic processes, but through billionaires buying media companies, foreign governments running influence operations, and ideologues who believe in genocide shaping the people in power. The infrastructure is built and it's operational, and now you know it exists. And just for the record, this has been about Israel. It's been about Netanyahu. It's been about the IDF. This is not about the Jewish people. Plenty of Jewish individuals, both in the US and in Israel, oppose what the government is doing. They oppose the genocide of the Palestinian people. They oppose Netanyahu. This isn't about Jewish people or the Jewish faith at all. It's about a state government with so much influential power that they are willing to throw their own people under the bus if it means gaining further control over land and people. Now, if this video helped you understand something you didn't before, share it, because the more people who see the connections, the harder it becomes for this network to operate in the shadows. Now, what do you guys think of all of that? Oh my gosh, that was a lot. My voice is dog tired. But what did you think, chat? I hope I was able to open up your eyes to some of it. Obviously, I wasn't reading chat during any of this because we were, talking about the crazy shit. That is going to be our show for today. We will post the entire story that we just did. We will post that tomorrow so that you guys understand. Oh, we got another super chat. Cool. Let's read that real quick. Let's read that super chat really quickly. From J-Man Vlogs again, said, put on the Sailor Moon outfit for the next news segment. Y'all have to earn the Sailor Moon outfit. I'm sorry. I don't do that for free. I actually think I threw it away.
Well, we'll get you another
I
one.
might have to buy another Sailor Moon outfit.
We'll figure out a goal.
Yeah.
For Sailor Moon.
Yeah, Sailor Moon stream here on the dump. Anyway, thank you so much, J-Man. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that you guys understand how serious this is. For all the people who are watching on my page, who are the Trumpers, who are watching this and still going, let's put Vance in charge, you clearly are not America first, friend. You're Israel first. Anyway, I've been Joe Von Bradley. I still don't have an outro. Thank you for watching.